Hello everyone and welcome to MTC's third webinar on maintaining productivity in a COVID-19 environment. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Neil Smith, I'm Head of Manufacturing Support Services and I will be chairing the webinar today. The Manufacturing Support Services are the customer-facing arm of the MTC, reaching out to manufacturers to understand their challenges and using the expertise of the MTC to solve these. We'll be running a short video at the end of the webinar summarising this. But before we start, I would like to run through some housekeeping with you. First of all, can I remind you that the session is being recorded so it can be viewed at a later date on the MTC YouTube channel. So you can revisit the content or share with colleagues. Details of this and other information relevant to the webinar will be shared with you in a follow-up email after this event. For the purpose of the webinar, you, the audience, will be in listening mode only with videos and mics turned off. Your viewing options can be adjusted by clicking on the View Options tab, which is positioned at the top of your screen. Using the drop-down menu, you can either show or hide the video panel. During the webinar, we'll be inviting you to ask questions using the Q&A function, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will be answered by our speakers at specific intervals during the webinar. We will try to answer as many as possible. Due to time constraints, we may have to be selective, but please participate. If using the chat function, please note that your comments will be visible for everyone to see. And please share anything on social media if you wish. In today's webinar, which we expect to last about 45 minutes, we have two speakers, Mel Armstrong and Pat Walsh. Mel, with a degree in metallurgy and a Cranfield Fellowship in Manufacturing Management. Mel worked in steel and heavy engineering businesses. She ran her own consultancy, encouraging leaders and teams to enhance performance by developing an incremental mindset to support growth and continuous improvement. Seeing COVID-19 as a game changer for organisations, their staff and families, Mel promotes upskilling workforces in the use of digitally driven technologies to realise the benefits for UK manufacturing. She's a senior advisor in the business transformation team at the Manufacturing Technology Centre. The second speaker, Pat Walsh, is a lean practitioner with leadership experience in the automotive, rail and aerospace industries and further experience in wider engineering and manufacturing, gained through 15 years of consulting. Structured and data-driven in his approach, he's passionate about improvement and able to engage with people at all levels of business to deliver results. Pat joined the MTC in 2017 and is delivering projects in a variety of sectors in his role as a senior advisor in the business transformation team. Okay, next slide, please. The webinar is titled Maintaining Productivity in a COVID-19 Environment, where we want to help you to think about this in your business, how to work productively, but safely within the government guidelines and methods. And what you should employ to make this happen, including carrying out and documenting a risk assessment. We will also touch briefly on technology and how this could make you more resilient in the future. After the two presentations, we will follow a brief introduction. We'll go into the program of webinars and also how we can, the MT can support you. Okay, can we go on to so the agenda will be, thank you. The MTC is one of the 7 high-value manufacturing catapult centres throughout the UK. The MTC, based in Coventry, has over 800 employees, and our remit is to help British manufacturing be more competitive in a global environment. We will assist manufacturers in the key points of quality, cost, and delivery. We will help you identify new technologies and also help you de-risk investments in these technologies and innovations. We can provide expert technical capabilities with our extensive workshop and our huge sort of knowledge and expertise from our engineering teams. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce you to Mel Armstrong to begin her presentation.
Thank you very much, Neil. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We imagine most of you will be working away out there, so we hope that the pointers discussed today can serve as a useful checklist. Working productively means ensuring your business strategy and your working methods are in alignment, and that waste is actively and continuously removed from each and every process within the business. Waste is the enemy of productivity. And like COVID-19, it gets inside organisations, unseen and uninvited, where it damages performance. To help with identification, waste can be classed as the graphic on the right-hand side of this slide shows. Learning to spot and eliminate waste is something the MTC is well versed in, and we have plenty of examples of increased productivity and business growth as a result of removing waste, and these are shared publicly on our website. 3 examples are shown here, all of which included relaying out factory areas and involving the workforces of each business. These initiatives led to improved workflow, better communications between everyone, lower product lead times, reduced costs and lower work in progress levels. I want to stress how important it is today to keep up with government guidance, and that provided by the Health and Safety Executive and other reputable organisations. Things are changing fast. There are 8 of these guides currently. Some of you will be operating in other kinds of premises, so you may need more than one guide. Bear in mind there are separate publications for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland too. COVID-19 presents everyone with a dynamic situation, which changes daily. And as this current phase of lockdown is being lifted, the assessment of risk is being left increasingly to each of us as individuals. This is not easy because the science around coronavirus is still emerging. With the numbers of infected individuals within the population falling to 1 in 1,700, the risks are lower, but nevertheless, hygiene and social distancing measures must be complied with. So more of this in a few moments. The next few slides describe planning and preparation measures, and their order is not prescriptive, but let me just say, these are not serial activities either, so you will have to do some of them concurrently. The first of these is a premises inspection. We've had some great weather recently, but there have also been some quite violent storms, and depending on where you're located, some wind damage could well have brought down trees and damaged your buildings. Coronavirus is unlikely to have lingered on any surfaces for longer than 7 days, but if premises have been closed, a deep clean will make your employees feel safer and will set future hygiene standards. Declutter the workplace. This will make it easier to keep areas clean. Do a success routine with your staff and set the standard as you mean to go on. And as you go around your buildings, think about how the flow of people can best be managed. Where are the pinch points? How can your staff be reminded about hand washing, hand sanitizing, cleaning routines and social distancing? Next slide, please. Remember that you, as an employer, have a legal responsibility to protect your staff and others from risk and a duty to consult them about health and safety. All employers must carry out a COVID-19 risk assessment. In the last slide, excuse me, we started to discuss risk. We thought about distancing issues and how these could be mitigated. we thought about how clutter could cause hygiene problems in the workplace. Start at the beginning and think about how your staff travel to work. If you provide transport by a minibus, then your duty to protect your staff starts from the moment they board that vehicle. If your staff use public transport and cannot get to work by their own means, can your staff travel at off-peak times? So could you in fact stagger their time of starting? Before you bring people back to work, you should assess your workforce. Use a questionnaire to ask about their personal circumstances. Think about their key skills. Work out how many people can be in the premises at any one time. And from this information, organise teams who can work together. Perhaps you can plan to operate a shift system, work shorter hours, or arrange staggered starts. By protecting your staff, you can protect your business. An important aspect of all of this is communicating effectively with your staff. And by this, I mean consulting with them, briefing them, listening to their concerns and answering their questions. Build rapport and trust with them more so than ever before. This will pay dividends as you navigate these uncertain times. If you have fewer than 5 staff, the guidance says there is no need to record a risk assessment. But we recommend you do. It may seem an onerous task, but again, keeping records is a way of protecting you, your business, and your staff. You can publish your risk assessment and share it with your workforce. Plan to review the measures and amend your risk assessment as needed, and build in resource for updating your risk assessment. Your risk assessment will point you in the direction of areas of risk. This will include areas where contact with surfaces will be high and therefore risk of contamination from the coronavirus increases. As we've said previously, employers must work with all staff, contractors, visitors sharing the workplace, and protect their health and safety. In the context of COVID-19, this means working through the 5 steps to safer working together. And this is included in the government guidelines as shown on the right-hand side of this slide in the declaration, which can be found in the guidelines. With hygiene routines, plan to use a team-based approach, using the idea of a small number of people keeping an area clean, preferably the one in which they work and with which they are familiar. Social distancing. Now, we all know this is about to change, but at the moment, we still have 2-metre distancing. And whilst the government declares that it's 2 metres, we have to comply with that. We have to wait for the date on which they say we can change. 2-metre distancing at the moment is still very important, along with hand washing and hygiene routines. Re-engineering processes and the changing of factory flow can enable your people to work safely. It can also increase your productivity. Use industry-specific advice produced by trade bodies and trades unions, as well as the government guidance. Even a food bank with very few resources can be rehomed, set up for a delivery-only service, and produce twice as many food packs with the same number of socially distanced volunteers within a few days. This is my last slide, and here I've given an example of what a completed risk assessment can look like. A risk assessment is more than a box-ticking exercise. Your risk assessment will provide you with a list of different measures that you need to implement. Evaluate the practicality of these and work out with your team how to take the necessary steps ready for your return to work, or an increase in production, or maybe a reduction in the social distancing from 2 to 1 meters. And the source of this particular risk assessment is one of the clearest that I've come across. The company's called Alcumus, and they provide on the web, free of charge, very clear aids for inspecting premises, for instance, and for writing risk assessments. There are others available. So thank you very much for listening. I'm now going to hand you back to Neil for a question and answer session.
Okay, thank you for that, Mel. Very interesting. We've had no questions from the audience, but I've got a few questions for you, Mel, if you don't mind answering.
Oh, that's great, Neil. Thank you.
You mentioned the risk assessment at the end, Mel. I was listening to a webinar the other day, and it was the speaker there was the MD of a precision engineering company. And he reckoned that his risk assessments for his whole factory took about a week. Would that be a fair guideline?
Well, that's a really great question, Neil. I would say that it does depend, of course, on the size of your premises, on the complexity of your operation, and how your current layout sits inside the premises. I would say that probably that sounds like somebody has spent, that MD has spent time and given it the thought and the preparation that the risk assessment needs. So I wouldn't like to say it will take a week, but it needs some consideration.
Yeah, you need to put some time aside, certainly.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned your presentation about number of staff and safe working. How would I work out how many staff I could have working in my premises? Is there a calculation, a formula for that?
I don't think anybody's written a paper on it yet, but I might be wrong. I would say that what you need to do is, so today the 2 meter distancing is in force. So you would need to look at how your processes are spaced out around the factory, and you could do some simple calculations looking at the spaces available and the processes you need to carry out. And I would say that possibly Pat may have something to add to this when he does his part.
Oh, okay, thank you. We've had a question from the audience, Mel. I'll read the question out. Should businesses allow visitors on site?
That's a very good question. And I think, again, that this is where the risk assessment comes into play. Whilst you're doing your risk assessment, you need to think about whether visitors can be allowed on site. It might be that some parts of the site may be okay for visitors, and other parts it would be considered too risky to bring a visitor in, both for the visitor and for the people working in those particular areas. So it's very much, again, on the social distancing, on whether you might ask the visitor to wear some PPE, are there screens in place, some of the things that Pat will cover in his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mel. Okay, I think we'll move on now to Pat's
Thank you, Neil. So good morning, everybody. So this section of the presentation is looking into 5 potential areas that will support your business to maintain productivity. Next slide, please. They are start of work and pre-shift checks, working area design and designated working areas, effective communication across your business, leadership at all levels, and then finally, readiness for your future technologies. In all of these areas, you will need to plan who within your organisation is going to carry out these tasks. Where are these changes required to take place in your business? And how long will it take to complete these activities to get your business back up to work? Next slide, please. As previously presented, you must ensure that all activities have completed a risk assessment prior to starting work. Make sure that the areas requiring PPE have it available at all times. This probably will require somebody to manage the supply and demand of this equipment. Also, what else do you need to do to ensure that you have enough stock? It's recommended that you review your supplier's lead time on all of this equipment, remembering currently everybody is after PPE. Areas that are difficult to manage social distancing may require additional measures, as Mel has previously mentioned, such as plastic screening, protective guarding, or even ordering additional equipment that previously some processors have shared items, such as machinery safety visors or even welding masks. Employee and visitor movement within your facility. Ensure you have clear marked out routes. Change the signing in procedure, for example, allowing your receptionist to sign everybody in. Separate clocking in and clocking out procedures. Same again, all of these changes require a lot of work, not only to implement, but to update and put as new procedures. This is not a quick task. Again, start to think about who is going to be doing all of this. And then once completed, you need to ensure that you set this as your new standard. There is a lot of change already before you've even started back at work. Think about assigning somebody to responsible for all the new methods that you are putting into your processes. And then also to think about how effective these processes are, the new processes. Maybe use this as learning points to help improve further, and then also use these as material for your communication briefings. Managing contractors. You need to take extra care to ensure contractors stick to your new proposed methods. Make sure they are fully briefed, including your expectations while they are on your site, even if they're a contractor that visits daily. Also start to think about, do they need to be escorted around your facility? Maybe they move from different area to area or department to department. Always consider different areas may have different processes. Next slide, please. Work area design and designated working areas. Visual management and visual controls has helped all leading businesses maintain and improve their productivity. During these times, we would certainly support you and your business to maintain your productivity. It's also highly recommended that you mark out what employees and visitors cannot do or where they cannot go. As the example on the picture, the government briefings, where they can sit, where they can go, where they cannot go. Part of your redesigned work area needs to include visual controls, such as clear and agreed new set standards. This can be in a form of a poster, a small single point lesson, maybe with some detail on, or a very quick, short and simple one-page document with okay or no good photographs for that set standard. Ensure you are maintaining your visual controls within your work area to monitor and record your productivity. Use these as key performance indicators. Don't let the workforce lose sight of the overall business goal. Also, when implementing different work patterns or routines, has any of this affected the customer supply, the supplier demand, or even your employees? Can your employees still use their method of transport or not? For example, have we introduced a new work pattern which has forced them to travel at a different time and maybe at a higher risk, i.e. during peak hours? The new design of work area, have you considered job rotation for your workforce? What are the risks of not allowing your workforce to rotate? Are you introducing poor quality, poor morale, boredom, or even worse, employee injury over a time period? Next slide, please. As well as your original daily or weekly communication channels, what extra have you put in place? Your workforce will be looking for you to give them guidance and clear direction, remembering we are all undertaking something very new to everybody. Make sure you have introduced an additional communication forum, maybe like the daily government briefing, to give your workforce the confidence that you are all in this together. Design the communication model around allowing your workforce to feed back and share their views. Some of the methods that are currently being used to support extra communications are, for example, video conference, mobile phone apps for persons working remote, maybe dealing with supporting services. If so, consider, do you need additional software, additional equipment, or even additional licensing? Some companies have even moved back to the old-fashioned tannoy system for persons working in warehouses or yards. This supports keeping the social distancing and maintaining communication between employees working inside and outside. Maybe think about they don't all need to be in the same room to communicate. Next slide, please. Leadership. As previously mentioned, the workforce is looking for guidance and direction from the leadership team. Ensure you and your managers are visible and conduct regular walks around the workplace. This will allow your leaders to see productivity, the morale, and also let them to see, look and listen of what's happening. It is very well recognized that successful businesses are open and honest. Make your processes transparent so you can identify potential obstacles. If you're able to understand your obstacles, you can deal with them. Also, this allows everyone involved to be aware of what the current status is, and then you can all agree a plan moving forward. The leadership team also needs to be open with the workforce, what the future strategic plan looks like and what are the goals, including milestones. This will give the workforce the confidence that they are looking for, and this can also be a very useful part of your communication material. As a leader, your people are your asset, and all of these recommendations will support your business to look after your people. Feedback sessions or feedback processes are very powerful. It shows that everyone is trying to pull in the same direction to achieve the goal. Always remember to recognize good work and effort. A very simple, well done is classed as recognition. Next slide, please. So readiness for future technologies moving forward. The COVID-19 crisis is driving business to accelerate the way of thinking that what new innovations are out there. The crisis has taken everyone out of their comfort zone and made them to start thinking what else we can do. This sounds like the horrible, scary word, change. We are all starting to move with change. Examples, different generations of people learning how to Skype, learning how to shop different, shopping for essential items only, or even accelerated the online shopping. Start to think what is going to stay in place and what else we need to do about changing. The year 2020 could be remembered of the year change was no longer a scary word. Here are some examples that have currently been put into place. We've got interactive meetings, virtual reality used in hospitals, automated planning dashboards, automatic doors and lighting, stop people touching everything. And in the engineering departments, remote screens, sharing and support service apps. To summarize, the 5 key points to support your business to maintain productivity is start to look at the pre-shift and start of work, the design of your work areas, the communication channels, the leadership of your business, and looking forward to future technologies. Also, as part of this presentation, we have included all the websites referenced to during these presentations, and they are located on further slides. The MTC is well positioned to support any future changes to your business, and with the latest innovations and technologies to help you maintain your productivity. This concludes my presentation on the implementation phase. I'd like to hand back over to Neil now. Thank you for any questions.
Thank you, Pat. Very interesting presentation there. You brought back memories over the tannoy system. I can remember days gone by in the factory I worked for, and Jan would put a call out. The call was 451, Neil Smith, ring 451. That was a tannoy call. And the shop floor in chorus would say, Neil Smith, 4'1", Neil Smith, 4'1". That's not true, I'm at least 4'6". Anyway, moving on. So I've got a few questions for you, Pat. You mentioned effectiveness, and I guess by that you meant the effectiveness of the sort of control safeguards you're putting in. How would you measure that effectiveness?
Yeah, good question, Neil. So the effectiveness really is, first of all, just to ensure you're not making any situation, process worse than it was in the first place, especially with safety in mind. So it would be a case of recording and monitoring the time it takes, the output it gives you, the quality it gives you. It's got a variety of sort of areas that just needs double checking off to make sure it works right for you. Okay.
And you were talking in your presentation about job rotation, and that may cause alarm bells to some people, and they may think, oh, my actual job's changing. Would that be the case, or is that just like a shift change or something?
No, it's more aligned around job rotation to give the workforce, if possible, during these current times, the flexibility, for example, to move from process to process. Then you need to think about the effects of sort of the sanitization of the process if people are moving on to the same process someone's just come off. But you also, it's more of a point of consider the point of not allowing people to rotate. It'd be very easy to say somebody stays on one process all day because that means we don't have to clean it. but then
Okay.
also think about the risks of that person being on that process all day.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, yeah. In this time, we've got you know, it's a lot. There's a lot of news out there which is not particularly good news. How would you suggest delivering some of these negative communications that you inevitably we've got to give the workforce?
Yeah. So as part of any of the communication briefings, I think I mentioned being open and honest, and part of the initiating a separate communication forum, maybe letting the workforce know we are going to be doing a daily brief at such and such time, which will be an update on the situation, and that will include both positive and negative. So everybody is fully aware, transparent of what the current situation is.
Okay, thank you. We've had a question from the audience, Pat. Question is, should we use a COVID-19 KPI to drive adherence to rules? It's an interesting question.
It's a very good question. I would potentially say, regardless of the title of it, it would be adherence to the rules of whatever your new set standard is. If you've agreed as a business to set this as a new standard, then that should be the rule anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And final question, Pat. How do we handle materials across moving different materials across different areas?
Yeah, great question. Very hard. Very hard, but there's certain things you can do. Obviously, there's the wearing of the PPE. There's even quarantine areas where material may have to go from A to B into a quarantine area before it goes out to sea. And that quarantine area might be just a separate designated area where materials can have a wipe down, including any packaging.
So there are extra processes and procedures then to take into account then with this with the COVID-19 environment.
Depending on what the material is and how it is handled, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Pat. So before we finish today, we're going to just go through the MTC COVID-19 webinar program and support, and then we'll finish with a brief video of the manufacturing support service, and we'll be sending out an email to follow up today's webinar and a survey with that. Okay. So how can we help you? Well, we can provide you with a virtual tour of your premises. So we will not be on site. We'll be using a mobile device to look at your premises and conduct a sort of survey of what we think is, or whether we think it's safe, or what you may need to do to make it safer for COVID-19. We could even do, if you allow it, make a physical tour. So again, going through your workplace environment and looking at what you've put in place and your risk assessments that you've done, and help you with your risk assessments maybe that you haven't done. So if you want to find out more information about that, email mss@the-mtc.org. Okay, next slide. So during the COVID-19 crisis, we've got, say this was the third webinar, we've got a fourth one at the same time next week. And that's on robotics and automation, practical and affordable steps. That's on 30th of June. And that with Phil Jackson and Tom Rook. We'll be discussing some critical factors for introducing automation and robotics successfully. If you feel that you need to talk to one of our advisors during this crisis, then please book a phone call, and we can help you with projects regarding cash flow, whatever, if that's required. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? We're going to finish off with the MSS.
We can deliver value to businesses quickly.
Working with clients, strengthen our businesses.
Using their challenges and the technology that's right for them.
£50 million worth of the latest manufacturing technology.
Fresh thinking you could not access any other way.
Doing things out of the ordinary is not out of the ordinary for us.
Working with MTC has been fantastic. I believe this is a smart approach to business.
We've turned over 30% more orders. We actually haven't employed anybody else.
We've managed to double our turnover in a period of 2 years without increasing our overhead costs.
We focus on helping Great British manufacturing get even better.
Okay, thank you for listening today, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you.